I thought you came to me yesterday and you said, "What are we going to talk about?" And I had no clue. I had no clue. And then I had like 10 things pop up at the same time about assessments, about associations, about approvals, about property managers. And I thought, what better topic to talk about than HOAs, condos, and how it all interplays with the contracts? That sound like a good idea, Mike?
Yeah, I actually would like to learn more in this area, so great topic.
There's always something we can learn on this deal. And I'll warn you, just when you thought you had it all figured out, life will happen. These deals are complex. The pressure points are in different areas, and the people kind of bring new things to light. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that Mike, that you are dealing with, that I'm dealing with, that some of my clients are dealing with. We'll do some hypotheticals, and I'll give you some real world examples as well. So first and foremost, we've got two statutes that are relevant here. And the big thing that's very important for everyone to understand is that these are totally different statutes. There's 718 and there's 720. Condos and HOAs. They're different. And the requirements when buying or selling a property in a condo or an HOA are very different as well. Don't treat them the same. Did you hear that, Mike? Don't treat them the same. HOAs and condos and HOAs, they're different, and try and know the difference because they have different requirements. So with an HOA, this is the easiest one. I would say HOAs are definitely the easiest. Typically an HOA would be the whole development, so if there's single family homes and condos and villas and everything in between, they're all under the umbrella of the master association. Typically, that would be an HOA. There are different kinds of associations. There are POAs. There's even a condominium association here in town. It's called Naples Bath and Tennis. That whole complex is a condominium, which is a little weird. The single family homes are actually condos. So we can be flexible, but the key number one is know what you're buying. Are you buying a condo? Are you buying an HOA? How do I disclose it? So HOA is the master usually. So if you think of like Laley or Fiddler's Creek or Treviso Bay has the master HOA. So whether you're on a FAR bar or a NABOR contract, you need to disclose the HOA. So first, we'll look at a FAR bar contract. There's a rider. It's rider B. It's called the HOA disclosure. And on it has a bunch of questions about fees. There's actually the statutory portion, which is the first page, just talks about fees. What are the assessments? Are there any special assessment? Is there a land lease? Whatever else there might be. The HOA rider in FAR bar, there are a lot more questions. They go beyond the scope of the statute. So someone asked me last night, can I use the NABOR HOA disclosure on a FAR bar contract? Mike, what do you think the answer is on that one?
What was that question?
Can you use a NABOR HOA disclosure on a FAR bar sales contract?
My guess is no.
Ding ding, you got it right. See, these are 50-50 questions. You had a chance. You're in the game here. I love it. All right, so um, that's the first thing. You cannot interchange these forms. So if you're in FAR bar, you need FAR bar disclosures. If you're NABOR, you need NABOR disclosures. HOA is kind of the simplest. You just need to disclose fees. Condos, alternatively, or co-ops, they're actually treated very similarly. You do need to disclose more than just fees. In fact, you don't need to disclose fees on a condo or a co-op. You don't need to tell them any fees on a condo or a co-op. You only need to disclose the condo docs and potentially, if it's applicable, the milestone and the turnover and the Sears. Hey, Dad, how are you?
Hey, long time
We're
no
talking
talk.
about associations, your favorite topic.
Ah,
Yeah. So, big picture, the two different statutes. HOAs, you need to disclose fees. Condos, you need to disclose the documents.
right.
It's really important that people don't kind of mistake those. A lot of times you'll hear people call a condo an HOA because that's just the vocabulary that's in their head, but they are different. HOAs and condos are very, very different. So keep that in mind. I think that's a very relevant thing to consider.
When I'm asked question, they'll respond with, "It's a villa." I'll say, "Well,
Right.
that's just the structure." I mean, there was a guy in town who turned tables in a restaurant into a condominium setup. It's just, anything can be a condo. It's just the basket you put something in.
Right, exactly. So, and you could have so a villa, what we would do is we'd look on the warranty deed and we'd see what the legal description says. And a legal description, it's really going to be one of two things, maybe three things. One of three things. One, it's the legal description will tell you this is a condo. It actually says the word condominium at least
Right,
twice.
it's illegal.
Whenever there's a legal description with condo, it's going to say a condominium. It'll tell you, it'll point it, punch you right in the face. It's condo. If you see that, you need the condo addendum for neighbor, or you need the Rider A condominium disclosure for FAR, right? So you know, without a doubt, if your legal description says condo, you have to use the condo
Yep.
addendum or condo rider. You can't interchange those forms. The HOA, like we were talking about, could also be required because a lot of times condominiums are within a bigger association. Dad, give me an example. What would
Pelican
be
Bay.
Pelican Bay? Perfect. So right down the street from our office, Pelican Bay. It is in the Pelican Bay Foundation. That is the master association. Dad, do you remember what the capital contribution fee is for joining Pelican Bay?
God, last time I did it was like $1,500.
It's 10,000 bucks.
Do they still have the exemption if you already own a place in there, Christian?
Yeah, but only one. So if
Yeah.
you already own in Pelican Bay and you buy something else, they'll reduce it down to 1,000 or 1,500. But you only get that once. If you buy your third property in there, you got to go back up to the 10,000 number.
Yeah,
I don't
the
know
people
how
need to
that.
tell you or whoever they're using that the buyer has another place if they're looking
Yeah.
for that exemption.
And most buyers know if they already live in Pelican Bay, they know about that because it's talked about within the community. So in Pelican Bay, it's a great example because you know it's in the Pelican Bay Foundation, so you've got to disclose that. So that would be an HOA disclosure. So either the neighbor HOA disclosure or the FAR HOA rider, which is rider B. But if you're a condo within Pelican Bay, you're also going to have the condo disclosure. So it might be I don't even remember some of the names, and shame on me, we do a lot of closings
The
in that.
Biltmore,
The Biltmore,
Remington,
okay. So you'd have the Biltmore condo disclosure. So that would be the condo addendum in NABOR or a
right,
condo rider, rider
right,
A. Now, here's another one. We did a closing in, um, what is it called? Bay Colony.
right.
So Bay Colony is its own association within Pelican Bay, and they're all condo, or not all condos, but there are condos within that. So you're going to have two HOA disclosures. You're going to have Pelican Bay HOA disclosure. You're going to have the Bay Colony HOA disclosure, and then you're going to have whatever condo addendum or rider would be applicable for that. So you could have three. I suppose you could do more, but that's the most I could think of. I mean,
Well, the
I,
bigger the geographical area, the more apt you are to have all sorts of combinations.
right. So it gets more complicated than that. And this is a little bit of a slippery slope. And so what I want people to know about is what are your minimum requirements and when are you crossing the line to going above and beyond? Because that's a very important thing. Dad,
Mhm.
I make the comparison to the Coca-Cola that Mike's drinking this morning.
Oh,
Right?
geez,
Mike,
he's cutting back on sugar, Christian.
he's cutting
Believe it or not.
back. So it's
Wait a minute,
diet. What
Coke
is it, Coke
Zero, Coke
Zero?
Zero, big
Coke Zero.
difference.
Uh-huh.
Right. So here's the
14
important
pounds of
thing.
caffeine.
Here's the analogy. Here's the analogy. Mike knows when he's cheating, right? He knows that when he drinks his Coke Zero, it's not good for him, but he knows, right? He's making the choice, given all the information, he's going to choose that. That's important. Now, if Mike was drinking Coke Zero thinking it was good for him, that's a problem, right? So that's the analogy I want you guys to think about for condo disclosures and HOA disclosures, because If you're going above and beyond, if you're doing it knowing you're going above and beyond, great. That's fine, right? I'll encourage that. I think that's great. But if you're doing it because you're confused and you don't know how to disclose what you're seeing, I think that's more problematic. So let's nip that in the butt. Lely. So Lely, big subdivision. They've got multiple layers here. So number one, you've got a CDD. So you've got to disclose that.
Right.
Number two, you've got the master association. You've got to disclose that. Three, you've got your condo association. Now you know you have to do a condo addendum or a condo rider. So we're good there, right? Well, Mike, what about the Players Club? Do I have to disclose anything about the Players Club? It's mandatory. It's a separate association. What do
It's
I
not
do?
mandatory.
For a lot of the units in there, not everybody, but
Are we talking
for a
about
lot.
the clubhouse itself being a member there?
Yeah, so depending on when your home was built, it is mandatory. If you had one of the original homes and you were before the clubhouse was built, then it's not mandatory, but Players Club is mandatory for a certain amount, for a certain amount. I think. That's what I believe. Let's say it's mandatory, all right? Go with me on this. Do I have to disclose it?
I would say, yeah.
Dad, what do you think? What's your opinion? It's
The
a
statute doesn't say so,
membership.
but somebody could make a, Johnson v. Davis argument.
Well, let's not go into Johnson v. Davis. Tell me if it's required by
By
association.
statute? No.
It's not. Right. So,
Hmm.
not required. It's not an HOA. Although some people will fill out an HOA disclosure because there are fees and it has a name. So they'll put the Players Club up at the top and they'll say the assessments are and they'll put the amount. And then it'll say whether there are any special assessments or not. And they'll put it all in there. Hey, we're disclosing it to you. That's my analogy to Mike's Coke Zero, right? If you do that because you want to disclose it, and this is your way of marketing the property and advising buyers as what their costs are going to be, I think that's great. I really do. But if you're doing it because you think you have to disclose it because it's an HOA or something, it's not. And I think that's where I want to kind of guide people and kind of educate that there's actually layers to this.
I
Now,
still would
Dad, you
tell people to
mentioned
disclose it though, Christian, just how you disclose it,
changes.
important.
Yeah, so I think, in that case, you're actually going to use it to your benefit. You're going to say, hey, just so you know, a benefit or a perk of living here is that you'll have access to the Players Club, and here are all the fees.
Right.
Now, if I was a real estate agent, I'd probably just put that in some sort of separate piece of paper with all the information. And I know a
Yeah.
couple of the agents I work with, they do a great job of that.
I
Uh,
usually tell them just put it in the cover letter when you're sending back your acceptance that, oh, by the way, you got the HOA summary disclosure, you got the condo disclosure, and here are the various fees that are in the place, and it's in your cover letter. But
yeah,
you
yeah, I
don't
think
put it on the form because you're messing with a form.
you don't need the form. It's yeah, because someone will look at it and it's like, oh, this is wrong. Well, if I'm doing it knowing that I don't need to, then I don't need to be corrected. So create some sort of nice marketing brochure that has all the information on the Players Club. Say, at the bottom, this information was accurate as of January 1, 26, and buyer needs to evaluate themselves. It's important, right? So I think, but going through those steps and knowing how these things interplay is
Well,
really
even
good.
sending them the application, anything to facilitate the deal going forward, you're creating
Yeah,
goodwill, you're making sure your deal closed and you get paid.
perfect.
But
Love that.
some agents put two HOAs on one form, and that's cost people deals or part of their commission. Actually, I've seen that happen. So you got to
Yeah.
be careful, the separate HOA disclosure for each HOA.
All right, Mike, we're on
On,
air. Or
on the
what does that say? RIA, no. On
On
yeah,
air.
air, sponsored by Coke Zero.
All right, here's the
zero.
corner talk. This now we're gonna have
Does
some
that
real.
have cocaine in it, Mike? Or what's in that?
So my dad mentioned something just now, sending over the application. Is that important?
You want to get your deal done. I mean, just because you don't have to doesn't mean you shouldn't.
Mike, is that important?
You could have a newbie on the other side.
I'm waiting for Mike to answer, Dad.
Could hold up a closing.
Well, just like you held up my video conference here, Mike. Yeah. Uh, so this
He's
is
drinking his
amazing.
Coke Zero.
This is really, really important. Almost every other day, I have a closing that's getting delayed because the buyer did not get the application, did not fill it out. The realtor didn't follow up with them. The association dragged their feet and they blame the same person every time.
The realtor.
Yeah. And the other person they blame is the property manager. Luckily, they haven't turned on me yet. That's probably coming next. This is a public service announcement. We're on air. We're on air.
Oh,
Follow up with your buyer and make sure they applied because it is a disaster. It is happening over and over again. I met with a seller yesterday who is so mad at the buyer because he applied 3 days before closing. I get out of that signing and I talk with Dawn in my office who says, I have another deal where the buyer never applied
yeah.
and they have a loan. And the argument, the excuse is the same over and over again of, well, I didn't know, or I didn't think it was mandatory, or I already owned here, and so I didn't think I had to apply. Dad, what do you think about that? Pelican Bay, good example. I already own here. I didn't realize I had to apply again. What's your thought process on that?
Well, I mean, I get this all the time. I did. People think it's the same as wherever they come from. So they don't appreciate that each state in this country handles real estate transactions entirely differently. We have different statutes for the most part. And unless their realtor leads them by the hand, and it might be their second or third or fourth deal most in their entire life, they're clueless. It's not their fault.
No, it's totally their fault. It's absolutely their fault. In this
Uh,
hypothetical, the buyer lives there. They were told to apply.
oh,
They already live there. It's totally their fault. Don't let them off the hook, right?
okay.
They won't take ownership of that. So our job is to keep them accountable. So this is my public service announcement. I don't care if you already own in there. I don't care if you don't think it's relevant or the property manager knows me and I'm best friends with the president. None of that matters. Follow up, get it in writing, make sure that they apply. And there's one main reason why this is relevant. The property manager wants to collect their application fee. They have a job to do. Their job is to collect the application fee, which goes to their revenue, to process the application, put it in front of the board. If the board decides, yep, they're fine, don't worry about it, we're good, fine, everything is covered. But if you try to bypass the property manager, it's not going to go well for you. And to that point, Scott has a question. Mike, we're still on air, okay? You got it?
Got it.
All right. So Scott has a
Let's pick
question.
on Mike Day.
Yeah, totally. I'm dealing with a condo sale. He has a listing on Sanibel Island right now. The HOA management company, I won't name names, is in Fort Myers. The buyer's agent requested the fairly normal list of HOA documents for the buyer. All right. So first warning sign. He's already said condo sale and HOA, right?
Yeah,
We're using things interchangeably. We have to
yeah.
actually be specific. HOA documents, condo documents. Now, the other interesting part, the buyer's agent requested the fairly normal list of HOA documents. Scott, I want you to already have those, right? So when you take this listing, I mean, especially with condos, they're not selling immediately. So we have time to pull condo docs and have it ready. So have all that ahead of time. And then number two, make sure you know, is this an HOA? If it is, you don't have to provide HOA documents. If it's HOA, all you have to do is disclose fees. Let's assume it's all condo. We have a quick closing on the 27th. That's another issue, right? Quick closing in
Another pain
condos.
in the
Dad,
rear
do we
end.
like that? Oh, we don't like quick closings in condos because there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen. All right, so the property manager so far has not responded to the request for documents. I even drove over to their corporate office yesterday to try and expedite some action. The guy at the front desk, they acknowledged the request from the seller in their system. The seller has tried calling and emailing the appropriate parties there with zero response. I was just told they have up to 48 hours to respond. What a terrible way to do business. Just for being not, just being completely non-responsive. Yeah, this is a major problem and it is not uncommon. We are seeing this all the time. Dad,
In
what's
different
your
businesses, Christian, it's everywhere now these days.
give me your impression. What should Scott think about? What are some strategies?
Listing agent should get these documents when they get their listing. Assume you're going to run into a manager like this. Always assume the worst and hope for the
Oh
best.
yeah. And it's really property managers, their job is to manage the property, and secondary to that or ancillary to that is helping with resales, right? There is work that's done, and I'm sure it's very disruptive to their business. Getting condo docs and doing estoppels and getting buyers approved. Like it's an ancillary service that they have to provide.
Right.
But their main goal is to make sure the roof is not leaking, to make sure the grass is cut, to make sure the taxes are paid. This is kind of secondary to that or ancillary. So keep that in mind. If you have a condo, all this should be done up front. And then the other thing is you're going to attract more bees with honey rather than vinegar or bears. What's that saying? Do I want to attract
You'll
bears and
attract more bees
honey?
with honey.
I don't think that's what I want. Let's say this way, be nice about it, right? So these property managers, butter them up, thank them, educate your client as to what the process
I
is.
grovel. I'm just
Oh, I'm
I'm
all in
shameless
on
about it. I
groveling.
don't
Yep.
care.
Mike, what do you think? What is your opinion on all this?
I agree with you, Christian.
Hmm, I like it. I like it. Um, okay, so that's kind of my thinking on that. And this is normal, right? They should have all of it available. Um, I say just expect delays, 48 hours. Yeah, there's a lot of documents and they should be able to. They're not going to let you cut in line and get to you faster just because it's an easy request. They're going to
Especially
take
with a
time.
holiday, you might not have board members in town if they need to have a certain number of votes.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so next step, the next issue. So obviously on that point, make sure the buyer applies. Don't, this needs to be an item on your checklist. I don't care if you're the buyer's agent or the listing agent. Follow up. Have they applied? Have they
Yeah.
applied? And if the buyer's not responding to you, go to the property manager. Hey, has the buyer applied? Because if they tell you no, then the buyer can't mislead you and you have even more of a reason to be a little worried about it. So push this. This is a really, really important. Don't let your deal fall apart because the buyer was lazy or naive or ignorant. Just make sure you hold them accountable. And that's as a listing agent or a buyer's agent. So the next topic, Mike, and you had some, really important questions on this one,
Hmm.
association dues, or more importantly, special assessments. So special assessments. Mike, why don't you give me some hypotheticals and we'll just run through those scenarios. We'll use neighbor as our kind of our base. And then Dad, maybe we'll talk about FAR bar alternatively.
Sure.
It always boils down to who's responsible for paying it. So you've got the scenario where the assessments has been declared, uh, approved by the board before an offer is submitted, and yet maybe the assessment isn't going to happen until somewhere down the road, but it's approved in the minutes before the offer is submitted. And then you have the scenario where it was approved after you have an accepted contract, an accepted offer. So who pays? How's that work out?
Mike pays it all.
Yeah, yeah, totally. All right, so
Give them a
let's look at
Coke
this.
Zero.
All right, so here's our sales contract. This is NABOR. The NABOR association dues are handled right on the sales contract. So this is section 6. So what is this, page 2? Page 3. This is page 3. So basically, it breaks it into different steps. Very simply, if this assessment, if this special assessment was passed before you went under contract, it is the seller's obligation to pay it. That is how it's been at NABOR for a long, long time. And FAR bar is the same. YBR is the same. If it was passed before it went under contract. Now, passed means that they voted on it and they approved as to who is going to own it or who's going to owe it and how much. I think there might also be something about timing, but not here. So it's really just identity of the assessor, lien, or and the property subject to the lien and the amount of the lien or special assessment. So very simple. Now, FAR neighbor also have this next step, which is line 92 on a standard contract. It says if that same special assessment is payable in installments, and then you check one, buyer or seller shall pay in full. Buyer and seller, or buyer seller, who's going to take over that responsibility after closing? If you chose seller or if you left it blank, then the seller pays that in full at closing. If you checked buyer, then the buyer is going to assume those payments after closing. Now, if I'm the buyer and I'm making an offer and I don't know anything about special assessments, I don't know anything about installments, I'm just going to check the box for seller because they haven't disclosed anything to me. So
Right.
my assumption is seller's going to pay it. And there might be nothing, right? It might be zero. So I'm going to pick seller. Why would I, as the buyer, ever choose buyer if I haven't been told about it? Dad, tell me about the disclosure, right? So that's the next part. Those are our past special assessments. We have the installments. And I just mentioned, if I haven't been told anything, why would I ever take over it, that same unknown number? Tell me about disclosing kind of what your mindset is, what your strategy is on how much to disclose about possible assessments, about current assessments, all that.
Um, this is relatively new language that's in there. It probably been inserted, within the last 3-4 years. Previously, if they knew the amount and they voted on it, and the property being liened, it was the seller's responsibility. Period. End of story. It didn't matter when the payments were due. Occasionally, you'd run into a problem if the association wouldn't let you pay it off in advance. You would have to escrow money for it. So
Yeah, or they get a credit.
yeah, so now they have this provision where you can check who's going to be responsible for it. I think a lot of people just didn't understand how it worked, to be honest. There's a lot of confusion over it. They confused the payments with the assessment itself, the timing of the payments with the actual, what is an assessment? How is it defined in paragraph 6? So that was confusing to a lot of people, and it caused a lot of ill will with buyers and sellers.
I want to kind of drum on this one item. There's a lot of benefit to disclosing these things
Oh yeah.
because number one, there's no way a buyer is ever going to assume the payments if they weren't told about it. However, if instead you said, hey, just so you know, there's a golf course special assessment. I've been paying it for 2 years. It's got 2 years left. It's, $330 a quarter. And, buyer will assume that at closing going forward. Okay, sounds reasonable. If that number is so high that it affects people's willingness to buy your property, then it's very relevant, right? It's not the opposite, right? You don't hide it because it's relevant. You actually have to disclose it because it's relevant.
Well, you're building a relationship that can affect the ultimate outcome of the closing, and it would affect how, say, a seller responds on a buyer's request for inspection repairs.
Yes.
So if you're open and honest, like you would be selling to your mother, which is what I would tell people, make believe you're selling it to your mother. You're more apt to be treated fairly, in the next 30, 45 days, whatever it is, until the closing date.
Yeah.
It's friendlier, it's less stressful. You get some indirect benefit out of telling them up front.
Well, let's talk about the next section. So this is line 95 to 99. This part is less friendly, at least in my opinion. So it says, if as of the effective date, there are any pending liens or special assessments other than those described above, which are not seller's obligation as set forth above and which were not disclosed in writing. So they're not passed, they're not in installments, and they were not disclosed in writing to buyer by seller prior to or concurrent with the execution of this contract. So not a current assessment, not past, and not disclosed. Then the buyer can terminate if it's more than 1% and the seller refuses to pay the difference. All right, so let's do some hypotheticals, Dad, and I'm really interested on your opinion on this because we've talked about this a
I know
lot.
we've done this before, like a year ago, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot that can be talked about on this topic. So, all right, let's say there's an elevator project planned for at the end of the year. It's only February 2026 when we're doing this video. The elevator project, it's been in the meeting minutes. They've talked about it. They know they have to do it, but they haven't put it up for vote. They don't have an amount. They've just kind of brought it up. They have some initial quotes. And if you
Right,
divvied it up and they did a special assessment, it might cost 50,000, it might cost 100, who knows, right? It's an expensive project.
right.
Well, the question is, I'm listing my condo for sale, and this is a $50,000 assessment coming down the pipe. Do I need to disclose this? Do I need to disclose this? So, Dad, you mentioned Johnson v. Davis, which is the lawsuit that kind of set the precedent of seller disclosures here in Florida. You and I have made arguments that, hey, just under that precedent, you should disclose this because you need to let buyers know about anything that's material. And a $50,000 assessment is probably material. Um, but I will make a secondary argument, not even thinking about Johnson v. Davis. My
Right.
argument is if you don't disclose it, a buyer could use it against you because it is, what did they say? Not disclosed in writing to buyer by seller in advance and is not a past assessment.
They can
And
terminate the contract and walk away. And not to mention this thing you and I were talking about before the show about the article you had on concealment. I mean, there's Florida statutes on the realtor's duty to not conceal information from
yeah, but
individuals involved.
I don't even want to get into that as much. I'm just saying if we just look at the math, if you don't disclose it, the buyer can get out of the deal.
They could cancel.
On
You could
claim.
lose the deal. It's the far bar is a
And
hell of a lot safer.
even if you wanted to kind of keep the buyer in the deal, you'd have to pay anything over 1%. So let's say it was a $2 million condo, and this is going to be a $50,000 assessment. Well, 1% of 2 million is 20,000. So 20,000, that would be the buyer's obligation because I didn't disclose it and it hasn't been passed. That's 20,000. That's the 1%. Anything over that. So it says here, unless seller agrees in writing to pay the portion of such pending liens or special estimate in excess of 1%. So I find in the meeting minutes that it's a 50,000 assessment. 1% would only be 20. I could shake you down for a $30,000 credit or escrow waiting for this pending assessment to come down the line. There's really no limitation timeline. It's incredibly broad. It's really based on the fact that you didn't disclose it. Now the buyer can hold this over you. And I'll say I have this file right in front of me. This is the file. This is a $6 million closing. Seller didn't disclose this potential project, and the buyer found out during their condo review period and kind of negotiated and got the seller to pony up, 50 grand towards this pending assessment. It hasn't even passed. But it's really messy. It goes to the fact that put everything else aside about seller disclosures and concealment and duty to disclose. Do the math. Disclose it, and you're not on the hook for it. Really pretty serious.
Absolutely agree. I mean, this happens day in and day out.
All right, we're closing off the meeting. That's it. He agrees.
I do. I mean, it just, they're gonna find out, and
They're
it just
gonna find
causes
out.
acrimony, distrust. I'm going to my lawyer. I can get out. I can go after the realtor, and they do. They go
Yeah.
after the realtor, the seller, the real estate company, everybody.
Now, here's the tricky part. Sometimes this surprises the seller, and that's okay, right? If we go under contract, The seller didn't know about this pending assessment, didn't realize it had been talked about in the meeting minutes because they weren't paying
Yeah,
attention.
they didn't go. They live up
They
north.
didn't go, they weren't listening, or this is, really just like it was buried. They just didn't see it. It's not, we're 2 years away. Then
Right.
it's really fuzzy, right? How does this language protect a buyer versus seller? It gets fuzzy. So when you list a condo and there's any sort of planned assessments, dig through the meeting minutes, post them to the buyer, post them on MLS, put it all out there, right? If the seller couldn't find them or wasn't looking for them, well, put it on MLS, because if you did that, if you put all the meeting minutes from the last 6 months or last 12 months, then no one could claim that you didn't disclose a pending assessment. I disclosed everything. It's not my job to read it, but go ahead. I gave you everything. Just disclose all of it. Put it all out.
Nobody likes to be feel stupid.
Yeah.
And that's what ends up happening, and it never bodes well. It never
Yeah.
does.
Mike, any other comments for me? What do you think?
No, I've always had the mindset that you generally don't get in trouble by over disclosing. It's when you
Yeah.
under disclose, that's
Yeah.
when bad things seem to happen. Yeah, it gets to the core of honesty. I mean, even if it's an error on the seller's part, uh, the buyer's going to be suspicious. So just a lot, though, I will say this, there are sellers that aren't aware of special assessments and things like that. They're not that involved at the board. They don't really follow the minutes. Um, yeah,
I'll leave
it's
you
it,
with two more thoughts. Number one, I worked for a developer and we were selling lots to a big builder. It was a Fortune 500 builder. And I think we owned the lots up at the front of the subdivision. It was like 20 lots. And they bought five of them. They were putting a couple model homes. They were putting a little parking lot, and I was holding on to the other 15. They were going to buy five of, every 6 months they were going to buy another five. And so that's called a takedown. We would do that all the time with builders. But this was a small little piece. This was only 20 lots. And my boss asked me, he said, why don't you reach out to them and see if they'd be willing to cut the grass? Because this is, it's next to their model home. And man, what a pain it would be for us to cut the grass and get up a whole contract. Like, why don't you ask them if they'd be interested? So I reach out and I say, hey, you want to cut our grass? And he blew me off. He did not respond to my request. And so my boss, I had CC'd him on it, and he chimes in maybe a couple days later. He goes, "Hey, Rick, we were thinking about it, and it's not about cutting the grass. We just wanted to make sure that you could present those lots as yours. In the meantime, like you don't have to buy them. That's fine. But if you wanted to schedule it, every week or every 5 days to get cut, we just won't be on that timeline. We're going to cut them once a month, because we're just staying within the city zoning requirements.
Right.
But if you don't, that's fine. Just wanted to offer that as just an olive branch. And he jumped like, yeah, great, happy to. Thanks, guys, appreciate it.
Yeah. There you
And so
go.
my boss called me after that. He's like, you got to couch it the right way. So we know we have to disclose it. We have a job to do, but can we present it in a way where the buyer will accept it in a positive light? Can we make it so like it's going to be received well? So, you know, potential special assessment, you're going to be screwed, or, upgrading the elevators, plan to, in the next, in 2027, look forward to a, state-of-the-art building.
Well, your last comment, Christian, I hit all the time, and what the special assessment is for is always critical. If it's
Yeah.
something that's going to add to the value of the property, it's going to make the place look nicer. The buyer actually gets something out of it.
Yeah.
It benefits them in the long run. So,
And I'll leave you with one last thing. Just think of Mike and his Coke Zero. It's
please
okay to drink
no.
it, Mike. It's okay to drink it. Just know it's not the same as drinking water.
Look at the rest of the
not
stuff in his
changing.
refrigerator.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank
Yeah,
you.
take care.